The important part of any historic city is monuments. Monuments, statues, various plaques and structures which are supposed to commemorate and represent individuals, events, historical moments of significance. The question is, what is represented by monuments? What do monuments represent? What they are? Certainly, they are not supposed to be objective historical accounts. They are not supposed to tell the objective historiographic truth. They are ideological, usually ideological structures. They are symbols which convey meaning of ideological and emotional kind. They tell us not what reality was, but how we should see it, how we should remember it, what it means to us. This is, of course, why often monuments are not actually accurate historically. One of my favorite stories is about a monument to one of the greatest, maybe the greatest historical figure in Lithuania, Vytautas Magnus, who was a leader, a ruler of Lithuania, Lithuanians of early 15th century, a great hero of that time, and in the city of Kaunas there is his monument. This is not a 15th century monument, it's a 19th century or early 20th century monument, but it is supposed to commemorate him and his achievements. And of course, to bear witness to his life and achievements, but also this is the representation and commemoration. Its main function is to make people remember. But what do they remember? They remember the greatness of the man. Therefore, he's standing on the stone construction, kind of a pillar, and he's surrounded by figures of warriors of different communities, different nations perhaps, that Vytautas in his life supposedly defeated. And what is interesting about this statue that I paid attention to when I saw it was that Vytautas himself is crowned. He has a crown on his head. And I asked the guide why, because I was interested in getting his answer, because obviously, I knew that Vytautas Magnus was not king. In the Middle Ages, you had to be crowned by the Pope and to have a status not just of a duke or a prince, but of king. This never happened. Vytautas was never king, but he had a crown, which suggested that he was king. And the answer which I gave from my guide was, yes, it's true, he was never crowned, but he deserved to be crowned, and he would have been crowned if not for the fact that he had died too early. So he didn't live long enough. But that's a very typical answer for this. The monument is not supposed to tell us what happened, but what should have happened. What was the ideological story about this particular figure? And we have many such monuments. So it would be naive to assume that monuments tell us the historical truth. Monuments are part of our heritage. They are selected, and they are selected from our present point of view, which also means that we want to have influence on whose statues and what monuments we have in our neighborhood, we have in our city. And we know from the current developments in many places that there is sometimes a very strong argument over maintaining or changing the status quo in this respect of removing some people's, some heroes' statues or replacing them, and whatever decision is taken regarding some controversial figure is a very serious, it's very often a serious matter, sometimes of a strong, even diplomatic consequences. In Poland, after the non-communist regime, non-communist government took over in the early 90s, of course, there was a massive process all over the country to remove or replace monuments that were supposed to commemorate communist heroes, either Lenin or some Polish communist leaders or people who are famous for their deeds in the communist context. Felix Dzierżyński, the creator of the political secret police, the future KGB in Russia, was Polish. He had a monument in Warsaw. Of course, there were many monuments to Vladimir Lenin. There were, of course, many monuments to commemorate the Russian Soviet army, the Red Army, particular generals or commanders of the army. And then the question was what to do with them. What to do with those monuments? Do we want a monument to Lenin? Do we want a monument to Dzierżyński? Do we want a monument to Marshal Koniev in Krakow? Most people would say no, we don't want it. But the question is, if we change this, if we remove this monument, then we, in effect, we distort the historical memory. And we will pretend something never happened. We don't want to remember what did happen in the past. On the one hand, one can say, for the sake of historical truth, we should tell the story, the real truth, as it used to be. But on the other hand, one cannot or should not expect people to live in an area of which the key symbolic elements would be statues of people whom they hate and whose the monument, the presence of which they consider to be something imposed on them, something, this violation their own freedom to choose where they want to live. So there were many difficult decisions. The monument to Marshal Koniev, the leader of the Red Army in Krakow, was removed. The statue of Lenin was also removed from Nowa Huta district, but not very important, but existing and nevertheless existing and critical and criticized monument to the Red Army in Krakow, which was located in the very center of the historic part of Krakow, because it was a monument to soldiers, not to Lenin or Stalin or anybody of this kind, but to soldiers, were not destroyed, but was removed to the cemetery and put next to the graves of Soviet soldiers who died in 1945. In other words, it was a kind of a compromise. We don't want to destroy this monument, because after all, it was a monument to commemorate people who gave their lives, but we don't want this particular symbol to dominate our area, our neighborhood. Therefore, we find a better place to it, and the better place is, one can say, a cemetery where, which is kind of given to and especially especially meant to be a place of memory of the Russian, of the Soviet soldiers. So there were compromises, there were discussions. Every time this kind of debate begins or develops, there is some controversy. Sometimes, as I say, there is also a lot of political, even on the very high level of politics, debates. But also internally, internal politics is reflected in this way. Again, over the last several years in Poland, there was a huge discussion, one of the key themes in national politics, or whether a monument to President Lech Kaczyński, who died in a plane crash, whether the monument to commemorate him should be erected in Warsaw, and in particular where. And this where question was a key question, because his twin brother, who became the leading politician in the country, wanted the statue to be erected in a very center of the symbolic part of Warsaw devoted to the presidency. In front of preferably in front of the presidential palace. It was a very controversial issue. On the one hand, there was no logical, obvious place where to put a new statue there, but also people who were politically on the different, represented different political, an alternative option, did not really want President Kaczyński's statues there, tried to offer an alternative place, also very elegant and very appropriate, but perhaps not dominating the most important part of the capital city in the sense of symbolism of state authority and state power. It was a very, very long debate. Eventually, some legal tricks had to be used in order to solve the problem, the issue. The legal trick consisted in such a solution that the governor of the province claimed the ownership of a particular square in Warsaw, which previously used to be controlled by the city council, and the city council did not want the monument to President Kaczyński to be there. The governor was of the opposite view, and he, by claiming the legal right to the place, eventually was able to secure the erection of this, the building of this monument there. But it was a very complicated story, very complicated legal issue, but also a good example of contested space, of a conflict over not only if the monument is to be erected, but also where exactly is to be placed. Because obviously, as I tried to mention before, there are many different symbolically meaningful parts of an urban space. There are many different areas, there are centers and peripheries, there are boundaries, and it always matters not only if a certain statue, if a certain memory, commemoration, if a certain monument is built, but exactly where, and the meaning, the significance comes also from the whole environment, the location, the connections with other places. There are, of course, more prestigious, less prestigious places, more official, more private places. So this is always a very complicated issue. And And a very interesting the monuments and statues are also the ones that commemorate not so much a historical figure or figures or politicians or generals, but also literary figures, or sometimes even figures who are really fictionary. There are, one of my favorite examples is a plaque to commemorate Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, of course, is a character from a fairy tale, from a story, but so famous, so well known, so meaningful in a very, very pleasant and very attractive sense that in Warsaw you can find a plaque that commemorates Winnie the Pooh in a way, pretty much the same way as we commemorate people who actually lived in a particular house. And this is, of course, a way to commemorate people of significance whom we want to remember, that we